the awareness of many scientists before Darwin contributed to an environment that was synergistic. One would have one idea, for instance, Lyell, a geologist, known for thinking the surface of the earth changes. The idea then was everything was fixed, it didn't change. But he saw the effects of erosion and the building that could occur from volcanic activity or earthquakes. And so he's known for something that's called uniformitarianism. You read it and you think, well, what he hasn't said anything, that what has happened in the past is occurring now and is going to happen in the future. If you read the definition of uniformitarianism, that is it. But what it did, that the surface of the earth, the inorganic, so not the life forms, not the earthworms, could change over time. Then what about the living? Could they also change over time? It was about this time also that John Ray occurred in studying animals and also plants, that some plants you could pollinated with each other, or some animals gave birth to live young, and they mated with young and had young that were fertile. And so he thought of the idea of species, and the definition of a species is those, if you're thinking about animals, or plants too, but for the animals, if they mate and their offspring are fertile. And then he noticed some of these species seemed more closely related to each other than others. So he gave them the genus name. Genus is plural, genera is plural. And with this, introducing then Carl von Linné, who's now aware of and others in the world, the terms species and genus. Carl von Linné is today referred to as the father of taxonomy. Taxonomy is the classification of life. And at the time that Carl von Linné was living, there was a problem with scientists of different countries communicating with each other, because it's not they didn't know the language of the other, but there was no standard way of naming different kinds of life. And so he thought, well, maybe he could solve this problem. And he is the one who said that, or gave each kind of life a genus name and a species name. And because those are two names, species and genus, well, then it's referred to as binomial, bi meaning two, nomial referring to name, binomial nomenclature. And so he is the one who named humans as Homo sapiens. The sapiens is a very complimentary species name for us. It means in Latin wise or thinking, so of course we're wise and thinking. And then the homo in Latin, it refers to humans, so we are the wise or thinking humans. And he was categorizing life by their physical similarities, structural similarities. The vertebrates, those that had a segmented backbone, were put in one group. Those mammals were put in another group. I heard someone, actually a geology professor, explaining to a class about taxonomy and the classification of life, and he compared it to a department store where one place you have shoes and another place you have baby clothes, or another place you have coats. And so what Carl von Linné was doing then was categorizing by these structural similarities, and he did a good job, because when DNA came centuries later and they checked the similarity of some of these kinds of life, they agreed with Carl von Linné. There were a few, of course, adjustments, but he compiled all this in many editions and the volumes were called Systema Naturae, and in the 10th edition is when he finally entered people in a subcategory of mammals referred to as primates. And what primates have in common, and you have this also, we can rotate our lower arm with our upper arm. We can grasp. We have flat nails. But it was structural similarities why he grouped us in this way. And so it greatly facilitated communication among scientists. Now, where Carl von Linné lived, it was in Sweden, a town where they have a charming pronunciation of the town. It's called Uppsala. So in Uppsala, in the cathedral there's an alcove honoring Carl von Linné. And since he was giving Latin names to every kind of life, he's now known as Carolus Linnaeus, which is a Latinization of his name. But he had a garden there where he was growing plants and noting which plants cross-pollinated, and so he made a big contribution there.